Hey you guys, welcome to Splinterlands TV. It is I, the Psy, and I've got kind of like something that I want to talk about today called getting your cards to just the minimum playable levels. And I think that's something that's important because with leagues going away and everyone being kind of thrown into the same mix, there's no more bronze, silver, gold, and I know it's a sore spot for a lot of people, but it also opens up some opportunity when you're looking at cards to decide where the sweet spot ends up being for some of the cards that you're going to want to end up owning or playing with. And since there's no leagues anymore, you're just going to want to look at basically what level makes the card competitive enough, and also like looking at it from price point as well, whether that be rental or purchase price point, that makes sense for you to buy at, because that might not always be max level. Let's just take a look here, for instance, at Goblin Psychic. This is an example that I've used before in one of my other videos, is Goblin Psychic. Obviously, it's a great card. Even at level 1, it has a minimum viable level of level 1 because it goes ahead and it gives tank heal, right? But what would you look at as its next like competitive levels? And this obviously makes a lot of sense when it used to be like league based, right? But you've got a second competitive level that happens at 4-star 30 because now it gains affliction. But if you want to be very competitive, I'd say that the sweet spot for the Goblin Psychic, for instance, is going to be at a 7-star 150. So if we're playing on a budget, and that's because it gets silence, which is one of the best parts about Goblin Psychic. It's what allows Goblin Psychic to basically dominate almost every Immortalis match because it applies the affliction, so their Goblin Psychic can't heal if you're doing a mirror, and also silence, so it removes 1 magic damage, and sometimes that'll make it so that you can't even deal 1 point of damage through an Immortalis, right? Which is giving everyone Void. So when I'm looking at Goblin Psychic and I'm thinking to myself, what is the minimum competitive level that I would want to have this card at in order for me to use it? That ends up being, in this case, the 150. Obviously, getting Dispel is amazing, but if you're looking at from like a price point standard, to get the Dispel, it's 400, it's 150. So that's actually basically going to be like almost tripling the amount of investment that you need to get your Goblin Psychic from 7-star, where it gets silence, all the way up to the 10-star, where it ends up getting Dispel. And I think that it's a bit of a fallacy to think that you need every card at max level to be competitive, but you do need every card at the level where they'll at least be playable. You know, playable in the competitive manner. And again, you can say, sure, a level 1, it grants healing, it's competitive, but really to what capacity? And a 4-star, sure, it gets affliction, but really to what capacity is it when the true value of Goblin Psychic comes in once it hits 7-star 150 and it gains that silence ability, right? Now, we all know that Goblin Psychic and all the rest of Chaos Legion is super cheap right now. So I mean, I'm not going to go into like an example of how you can kind of like try and achieve the minimum playable level using Goblin Psychic. But let's go back. Let's look at another one of our little buddies here to kind of illustrate that. We'll go to Untamed and we'll choose the Kimmer Princess. So by that same logic that we're talking about here, I would say that Kimmer Princess has 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3-star. Useless. No point even having the Kimmer Princess at that point in time. 4-star is when, to me, it would gain its minimum playable utility because it actually gains tank heal. And it becomes an amazing card because you got a 2-drop that's, I guess, magic, which is fine, right? But a 2-drop with tank heal. Absolutely amazing value for the cost that it is, right? And if you can afford to get it up to an 8-star 115, like it gains triage, obviously that's a great thing. But if we're talking about like minimum viable for playability, I'd say that you could be happy with a 4-star 25. In fact, that's what I have. I have a 4-star 25. I got a few other ones, I guess, but an extra 10 BCX. But yeah, I've got a 4-star 25, and I find this completely playable. Is it as good as having triage? Absolutely not. Don't in any way think that I'm saying that, oh, max levels are worse than these minimum viable levels. No, I'm saying that this is like minimum viable level. And here's one of the cool things that you can do when you're looking at cards from that standpoint, right? Everyone wants the 115, great, but I mean, not everyone's gonna have the budget to 115 if you're looking at buying. Renting's a different thing. Renting is pennies on the dollar. Like, you can rent whatever you want. It's super cheap. I encourage that. But if you want to own the assets and you're looking at minimum viable level, again, 4-star 25, you can go to for sale and you see that, yep, there's a 5-star 40 that's available here for $13.90. Right? And you got a max level, that's $40.95. You got a few little tidbits here, an 8 and a 5er that are kind of low, but what would it cost to get that, again, minimum viable level of 25, because that's what you're looking at, right? And this one actually works out pretty perfect, because look at this. You can take the 8, the 5, skip the 40 and the 115s, choose a bunch of the onesies, and get your way up to, you need 25, right? So there's 3 there, because it starts to get expensive, right? It goes from 40 cents to $1 up there and everything. So you want to try and like make it as cheap as possible. So we'll keep the 3, 26, 25. Here we go. So in this example, you could go ahead and you could get the 5-star 40 and you could pay $13.90 for it, right? You'd have a 5-star 40. Obviously, I'm not going to say that's not better than the 4-star 25, right? It is better, but by what margin? If you're trying to like play on a budget and you're still looking for that minimum viable level, for $8.94 right now, you could go ahead and you could buy yourself a perfectly good Kimmer Princess. And where does that kind of like leave the market, in fact, at that point in time, right? Like, it leaves the market with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 BCX below it. And then you got these maxes, and then it's pretty much all over for the Kimmer Princess, right? So this is actually what I'd look at as like a buying opportunity in a lot of ways, because for $8.94, you can get the last Kimmer Princess that will meet up to minimum viable playability once it goes ahead and it gets the tank heal, right? And there's tons of these examples that we can do. Like, let's just go to beta. I'll show you another one that I'm kind of looking at here as well. I think it's beta, and it's dragon, if I'm not mistaken. Let's try and find dragon, beta dragon. Here it is. Yeah, for instance, fiendish harpy. Here's one that I really want. And this is like where I get stuck with my kind of conundrums that I go through as someone who has to like try and keep it budget friendly, right? When you look at fiendish harpy, like, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, all bad. Like, they don't have any way to really attack. Sure, you got a 2-drop with 2 damage, but it's only once it hits the 11 BCX that it actually gets opportunity, and it becomes a great card because now it's a 2-drop for 2 that, sorry, a 2-drop that deals 2 from any position, obviously with opportunity. So it's really low mana cost. You can squeeze in like fiendish harpy, maybe next to the celestial harpy, right? And then you got 2-2-drops that are both like homing in with opportunity. That's a pretty good combo in a really low mana match, for instance, right? But would you ever want a 1-star? I'd say no. So what you're going to have to go and look at is you're going to have to look at the minimum viable, again, this is if you're trying to like keep it as budget friendly as possible, is 11 BCX. So when I'm going in here, obviously I don't want the 6-star, and I'm looking at if you can even do it. You can't even do a minimum with what's left here of the 11 that we'd be looking for, right? Assuming that like, and that starts to get up to $9.45 and things like that. So this is one of those cases when I probably wouldn't even end up like from the standpoint of wanting to purchase, where I wouldn't even end up buying it, because I don't want a 46, right? I want to try and find that sweet spot that would cost me the least, but also get me like a good viable product of 11, and I'd want it at a price that would hopefully be around the 75 cents mark, right? Because then 11 BCX at 75 cents would obviously be a fantastic deal in the face of having to buy the full 46, right? Which don't get me wrong, has an extra attack and everything, but minimum viable would be this 11 BCX in my opinion. No point in having 1, 2, or 3 stars. You got to get the 4-star as a minimum. Let's see if we can find one more example here. So we've done some of that. Let's go on this beta roll. Let's see. And since we've been doing like blue, let's try and find one more. Let's look at the mermaid healer. Okay. So you can see that there's lots of mermaid healers that are for sale at 6-star. Obviously 6-star is the best, right? You get cleanse, you get strengthen, you get triage. Absolutely amazing. Now, where are the points that you think on mermaid healer are their minimal viable product? I think that it actually starts at level 1, right? You can very easily just buy one mermaid healer and just deploy it just for triage use. Say that you've got a tank in the back or something with that has taunt, and you just want another backup triage character. Still does something. So in a card like this, the minimum viable like playability would actually just be a 1-star. You can just happily go and get a 1-star, and then you've got something with triage, and you know that's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. You're looking at $1.68 to give yourself a triage for 3. The next stage up, in my opinion, would be this 3-star. So there's no point in having a 2-star, basically, right? If you're going to just have a 1-star, fine. But the next is 3-star, because now you're granted that 1 magic attack. So now you're looking at a 3-star for 6. All of these are 46s, and the first one comes into play right here. That would be your minimum viable card if you were looking at a mermaid healer that you wanted to have a magic attack, right? So obviously we can go up from there, and you kind of get like the example that I'm talking about. But in this case, it's all 46s, when this sixer is gone, the next minimum viable card selection would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, would end up costing $11.83, where right now it's only $8 as the minimum viable card if you're looking at just having a magic attack. Now again, of course, if you're looking at 11 as that being your minimum viable card to give strength in on top of everything else, then you would want to go back and you would want to look at this 11 maybe at 139 as a 4-star, because you know that you're not going to be able to put that together any cheaper. Let's look. So here's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So you see that the 11 is 1761 versus the 1525. So if in your mind, to be competitive, you needed that strength and to have your minimum viable product, your minimum viable card, you need to get this 4-star at 11, which works out to be your cheapest in on that kind of a card. But look at how fast things dry up before it goes up to like 250 for that next 4-star 11, right? So you got the 4-star 11 at 15, you got a 2750. And again, nothing I'm saying is financial advice. I'm just trying to show you guys, and here's my collection as well. I'm going to show you this as well, that sometimes it's just about getting the minimum viable product. And there's no better way for me to illustrate that than for me to show you my Rebellion cards that I have right now and some of the minimum viable product that I've created. So for instance, let's use Lurking Puffer in this case. Lurking Puffer is a minimum viable product, in my opinion, at 5-star 60, right? Obviously, if you can get up to 400, that's fantastic. You've got poison, you're obviously way, way better off. But what's the minimum viable product if you want it to be competitive? My mind, you're looking at 60. Right? And then if you're not going to go with the 60, you may as well go up to 400 after that. Like there's a big jump, right? For me, it's either 60 or 400. There almost is no in between. I happen to get some good like bids in on some in between to get up to 100. But for the most part, I would be happy just having a 5-star 60 Lurking Puffer. And the reason why is now we're no longer penalized for going into play with a lower level card. Like there used to be that if I was playing in Champion and I went into Champion with only a 5-star Lurking Puffer, they would take 5, 10, 15, 20, like 25% off my earnings or the rewards that I get because of it being under leveled. But now that doesn't exist anymore. And you can just go ahead and be like, you know what? This 5-star 60 Lurking Puffer, it has silence and that's good enough for me. Sure, I'd love to have poison, but the difference in price between them, look, oh, look, there's a nice 41 right there. Look, so 41, 42, 43, 45, 45. Here, there's 56, 57, 58, 59. So here's a 60. That you get for $9.12 right now, right? Ooh, and here's another 60 you could get for $9.99. So it's still cheaper to buy out all the bottoms and leave this one for $9.99 as the top one, right? But I mean, that's just so much more affordable than trying to go and even get not even close. This 400 down here. Yes, we do have an example. This 400 right here, that's 75, right? So minimum viable product is not $75.19. Minimum viable product is $9.12. And that's where you can really kind of differentiate. And everyone says it's too expensive to do anything. But you have to look at it from not the standpoint of a maxed card, from the standpoint of the minimum viable product that you're willing to purchase. And whether that's getting the 7-star Goblin Psychic or whether it's going ahead and getting the 5-star Lurking Puffer instead of maxing them out, because I mean, you've only got so much bread to spread, you know, then I think that's totally fine. And I have been having success playing with a few cards that are in fact under leveled, especially when we're talking about Rebellion. Right? Like I've got lots of cards. I got an 8-star 220 on this guy here. And is it really worth it for me to double him up, basically, for me to double his cost to get, 2 hit points? I'd like the 2 hit points, but then he'd end up costing me an extra 880 for me to do that, basically, you know? So minimum viable products are different for everyone. When we're looking at Torch Vizier, right, I'd say minimum viable product is this 4-star here. 4-star 25, where he gets Reflection Shield. Without the Reflection Shield, he's kind of, you know, he's fine. But once he gets the Reflection Shield, he's a great answer to Tofu even at this point in time, right? No thorns getting him. This is the minimal viable option. And then the next one I'd say would be up here. There's no point in getting 5-star 40, but there is a point of getting 6-star 60 because you get that extra attack. And then obviously the 115 for the 5 attack again. And you'll see your points where you're like at your cutoff. But things like, it's not even worth, I guess it's worth owning minimal viable product 1-star for a 2 attack guy for 5 fine. You know, I'd rather have 5 and have him at least have the 3 attack as a minimum viable. Like, I don't know about that 1-star, but right here is where, if you want to be somewhat competitive and have at least access to abilities, is where I'd say his minimum viable product would be, is at the 4-star 25. So, and again, my guy's not maxed out right now. I managed to get I'm rocking a 6-star 60. So I'm rocking the minimum viable product to be somewhat competitive when it has 4 damage, you know? And your guy, the Psy, I'm not the best, but I can play with the big boys. So you don't need to have everything maxed. You don't have to look at it like it's an insurmountable wall that I have no hope of crossing. And I illustrated that again when I went to get my Mana Warden, right? So I've got a Mana Warden, it's a 4-star 30, but you know what? 4-star 30 is where it gets impede. So, I mean, I may as well go ahead, I may as well bring it up to the point when he gets impede. Would I like to have piercing? Absolutely. And as well as 6 like HP instead of only 3. But at the same time, for someone like me, just getting that 30 BCX, here, let's do it real quick, like 0.21 times 30 equals, like, and paying $6.30, which by the way, it's actually kind of cheaper for you to get, it's barely more expensive for you to go and get 2 gold and end up having access to the same thing, spoilers. But it's basically, when we look at it, we're looking at 30 of them at 21 cents, right? Being $6.30 doable, you know, versus if we were to go and we were to take it all the way, 0.21 times 400 equals $84 at the top level. $6, $84. Where is it viable as far as playability? I think you're probably fine with the 4-star to grant the shield ward, you know, which is the main ability. But it's like that, and every person is going to have their own like way to approach it. But we all look at things, it seems, in this game in the term of like absolutes. You absolutely have to max level it, or else there's no point in you playing. And I just don't feel like that's true. I feel like there are points you need to bring cards to achieve that minimum playable level, right? But once you're there, a lot of it does come down to skill after that, right? Knowing what card to play in the right circumstance. If you know that it's a magic only match and you're going to be going again, and your options are either blue or your options are either green for Immortalis, or you can play blue and you've got access to Aquatis, everyone knows that you choose to play Aquatis in that circumstance, right? To beat Immortalis by backfiring them. You just got to know the right card for the right circumstance, and even Aquatis has its use, but you do need to max level him in that little analogy. So there you go. There's me rambling on for a little bit for you guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Talking about minimum card viability. Not always max, but there is a point that you do need to get up to basically expect good results from the card itself. If you found that useful, smash like, share, subscribe, do those things that I guess YouTube people like to tell you to do. And I'll catch you on the flip side in Pretoria. Take care, my friends. Until next time. Peace. Oh, wrong hand. How am I supposed to control the mouse? See ya!